As some of you know, this is a new place for us to broadcast from, and we're very excited to be here at the new Orange County Community College campus here in Newburgh. And I know that a lot of you traveled from great distances, Albany and Nassau County and Staten Island and from throughout the Hudson Valley, and I thank you all for coming to what I think will be an interesting morning for everyone. A couple of rules and regulations. There are none. We want everybody to be involved. This is questions, answers, suggestions. This is your conference. We want you to be involved. So when our panelists are here, they're not here on account of just their good looks. They have information, they have ideas, and they need your input. So I suggest that you participate. So when we get to the question and answer session, please don't be shy. Please get involved. We implore that. And one thing, sort of on a somber note, last Friday, one of our board members, Richard O'Byrne, passed suddenly, and I just want to extend our heartfelt condolences to Richard's family and friends. And I know up here in Orange County there are many who knew and respected Richard for his years of work up here, and his passing was very untimely and very sad, and we just want to express our condolences to Richard and his family. Now, as opening our session, we have the Vice President of Orange County Community College here at the Newburgh campus, Mindy Ross, who will say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I come bearing the regrets of my president, Bill Richards, who had an emergency this morning and couldn't be here to greet you, but I'm very pleased to do so. I'm thrilled to show you our new campus. We've been in this building just 9 months. We have almost doubled our enrollment here in Newburgh and expect to continue to do so. With the opening of this building, we've been an extension center in Newburgh for many years, and several years ago we became a branch campus, and this building project was undertaken. And with this campus, it's a major leap forward technologically for the college. Every classroom's a smart classroom, it's a wireless environment, and our students not only enjoy that, they expect it. And we're moving forward in Middletown. Within 2 to 3 years, we'll have a brand new building, a Center for Science and Technology, which will also be state-of-the-art. So it's a recognition that I know all of you share, that the workers of the future, the students of now, expect a technologically rich and varied and flexible environment in which to learn and work. And so we're working to provide that kind of environment here. So I wish you well this morning. I hope you have a wonderful, productive day, come up with a lot of good ideas that we can benefit from. So thank you very much for coming.
Okay, now you've all been officially welcomed. All right, give us a second here while we queue up everything that's supposed to happen. Some of us are more technically challenged at times than other people. How's that? Okay. Just a couple of things real quick. I'd like to thank our sponsors who participated this morning. Without them, this whole morning might not have been possible and come off as smoothly so far as it has. Certainly, NYSERDA is to be thanked for their support of iClean and Hudson Valley Center for Innovation. Computer Blue, where's Ralph and where's Byron back there? Thank you very much. John Mallon Communications up in Kingston, thank you very much. Hudson Valley Business Journal, and of course Orange County Community College, and Media 721, Jeremy and his crew set everything up here and did a phenomenal job. And just so everyone knows, we are, as usual, webcasting this presentation worldwide. So hopefully our worldwide audience will learn a little bit about not just the Hudson Valley, but all of our organizations and SUNY, and get a much better understanding and feel for what we're all about as a group. This morning's presentation is about jobs, and let's face it, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is about jobs and job creation. So that's where we're gonna focus. We have a wide variety of experts, academics, investors, and state folks as well. All are potential job creators. And I'd like to give you some background data, some statistics, and some solutions to set the stage for this morning's discussion. Emerging technologies in the life sciences, energy, media, materials, and computing sectors are sparking an unprecedented array of novel technology innovations. This rapid pace of innovation is causing an increased competitive threat to established businesses while offering the potential for newcomers to actually compete with incumbents. In today's globalized world, businesses cannot afford to ignore the opportunity and challenges presented by emerging technologies. Technological information is a global competitive activity. As ideologies adjust and the exposure to technology increases, so do the demands for innovation. Yet the successful innovation is fraught with difficulty and that magic word, risk. This symposium this morning looks how we can leverage our regional education resources, business development, incubators and accelerators, corporate partners, funding sources, and existing industry clusters to form a working innovation ecosystem that will foster regional economic growth. With the average lifetime of a company on the Fortune 500 estimated to be less than 30 years, the impact of technology on business has never been greater. At the same time, businesses are under increasing pressure to be sustainable. The ability to collaborate and communicate is fundamentally less complex than at any time in our history. Convergence and the emergence of communication devices and platforms are sparking an unprecedented array of novel and potentially game-changing domestic and international technology innovation, associations, and collaborations. Michael Alter, who is president and chief executive of a company called Sure Payroll, was recently interviewed by Samuel Rosenberg, who is a Roosevelt University professor specializing in labor economics. Rosenberg asked why cash-flush companies are at best not hiring, and what would it take to change that? Alter's response was, our customers have been telling us that they've been forced to be more productive. Companies can let go of employees and make more money. Some of those productivity improvements are driven by technology. The Great Recession forced everybody to question what they believe is a necessity. Coupled with an explosion in very cost-effective software, systems convergence, and low-cost social and internet marketing, businesses can reduce cost and at least maintain levels of profitability. It also seems logical that more people are foregoing searching for jobs and starting companies. Logical, yes. Accurate, no. In fact, the number of startups has rarely varied from the early 1950s by 1 or 2% until recently. A recent study discovered that the first 6 months of 2011 saw the lowest rate of new startups in history of tracking new companies. Are we not developing enough entrepreneurs? Have social stigmas related to failure impeded our tolerance for risk? Tough questions. It's all about productivity. Through the implementation of new technologies and lean practices, the average worker produces more in an average hour of work. And the addition of new workers depends on demand for products and services. This government study suggests that the total of new firms started in 2009, for example, is on course to contribute 1 million fewer jobs in the next decade than historical averages would suggest. Another interesting statistic reveals who are becoming entrepreneurs. The largest demographic of entrepreneurs are 20-somethings that are usually attending or have just graduated from our colleges and universities. But according to the Kauffman Foundation, The second highest demographic of entrepreneurs and new business owners are between 55 and 64. This, my friends, is a dramatic shift. The challenges of technology and its aggregation into our businesses can at times be daunting. The venture capital community at large has passed an important milestone that may mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. This dividing line in history was revealed last summer in a report from the National Venture Capital Association, which showed that 10-year returns on venture capital investments had turned negative at the end of 2009 and nosedived during the first quarter of 2010. Let me translate what might sound like some insider mumbo-jumbo. Venture capital investing, the lifeblood of innovation, may have become a risky bet. This chart is self-explanatory, but you can see the impact of small business on our economy. And when we say small business, we mean small business, we mean emerging business, emerging technologies, and less mature companies are terribly impactful, and this is where the jobs will come from. I think we can all agree that the emerging sector and new business is where the future job creation lies and where our economic growth is going to stem from. We're here today to explore how our institutions of higher learning, including community colleges, private colleges, and universities, and especially our SUNY four-year schools, can develop and institute increased levels of collaboration that can result in new products, services, technologies that can be successfully commercialized, integrating students with faculty, with entrepreneurs and industry to form new enterprises, and to attract technologies and companies from outside the region, outside the state, and outside the country who can benefit from not only our knowledge base, but our combined talents and resources. Here at the Hudson Valley Center for Innovation, we've been assisting emerging growth enterprises develop and commercialize their products and services since 2005. In 2010, the HVCFI and the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering, directed by Dr. Pradeep Holdar, who is a panelist here this morning, raise your hand, formed a partnership called iClean. The iClean partnership is committed to 4 overriding principles: technology development, education and training, accelerating commercialization, and technology-based economic development. In 2010, iClean became one of only 6 incubators and accelerators within the state of New York to be recognized and supported by NYSERDA. iClean features companies involved in building controls, solar energy, recycling and recovery, LED lighting, battery technologies, wastewater, electric vehicle charging stations, and more. In 2009, the HVCFI launched its wind power initiative as a cluster to create a national hub for the manufacturing, assembly, commercialization, and certification of the burgeoning light wind industry right here in the Hudson Valley. Just last month, we filed a grant proposal to the Federal Economic Development Administration for a light wind incubator and job training facility right here within the city of Newburgh. Today, the HVCFI is proud to introduce its global virtual presence, iCAN-NY. iCAN is a fully optimized website that's been created to maximize the exposure and implementation of our acceleration, commercialization, and business development philosophies to an ever-expanding global audience. Over the past several months, we've developed a global collaborative network for the reciprocal commercialization of clean tech and energy-related products and services. Thinking locally is fine, but in 2011, we suggest that thinking locally should include acting globally. But today's symposium isn't about the HVCFI or iCAN. It's about instituting a collaborative platform for the commercialization of new technologies and creating the clusters to implement these strategies. The platform must include job training, linking academia with business, incubators, accelerators, government, and industry. What industries hold the greatest promise for commercialization given the realities of global competitive forces? Can we continue to depend on subsidies? We must face the realities that in our free market system, the strong and the innovative survive. I am suggesting that as part of our economic and business plan development, we include a cradle-to-grave sustainability plan. We must operate as a business, not looking for the next handout, but creating a value stream that results in a sustainable future. So in conclusion, where will the new jobs come from? Our innovation ecosystem is evolving into a global ecosystem. Over the past couple of years, it's no secret, we've slipped a bit, and in some cases lost our innovation spirit. The United States represents the most vibrant and popular community for commercialization of new products and services. The global cachet of New York as the world's business epicenter gives us a distinct competitive advantage. The talent is in this room this morning to encourage innovation, make our established companies more competitive by introducing them to adoptable and available innovations, work more closely with economic development and government agencies, develop industry clusters, train a ready workforce, and attract, develop, and commercialize not just technologies, but industries that will lead to a bright, forward-thinking, and sustainable economic future. Thank you. Next on the program, we have the chairman of the Hudson Valley Center for Innovation, Dr. Arthur Anthonison.
I brought my own.
You brought your own?
Right, my own cheering section.
Perfect.
Thank you, Les. That's a great segue into this symposium and a good start. My job right now is a brief one, although it could have been very long because SUNY sent me Johanna's bio, which I forgot to bring. So she and I just talked for a few minutes just to give a brief background because we are very, very lucky that SUNY has chosen Johanna to be our senior deputy vice chancellor, as well as is it vice chancellor for Pipeline for Education? Another title.
Senior Vice Chancellor for Community Colleges
and Education. Now, she gave me some notes, and if you backtrack on this, you can figure out how old she is. She spent 10 years at CUNY, Bronx Community College, which is very impressive if you've never been there. It's awesome, the library. York College, Queen College, and focused on adult education and workforce development. Then 22 years at State Ed as being the Senior Deputy Commissioner. I wanted to get that right. With regulatory oversight of all colleges, public, private, and proprietary. She also was responsible for all licenses. So if you had a license to do nail polish, you'd have to get that, as well as one of my friends had to get a license to do blasting, anything, and my license as a professional engineer was signed by that organization, and any licenses that are issued by the State Education Department. So she had a broad experience in education through her time and tenure at the State Education Department. Now, as I just said, she is the Senior Vice Chancellor for Community Colleges, which includes workforce development, working very closely now with the governor on the new regional economic development councils. Being a Senior Vice Chancellor, that puts her right on the cabinet, answers directly to the Chancellor. Now that's important for community colleges because that position was, let's say, redefined when Nancy Zimpher, our Chancellor, came in. And now she's working very closely with community colleges, and we're very lucky to have her here because she's has requests to speak all over. In fact, we were just together in Albany, where she was in Portland, 12 hours before? Took a red eye back from Portland at a conference there. I think it was Cradle to Career symposium in Portland. Took a red eye between, got the middle seat, she was lucky. Yeah. And made it for our breakfast meeting in Albany. So we're very, very lucky to have Johanna here. Thank you.
And aren't we all lucky to be working with Arthur? He is an amazing man, and I have the pleasure of working with him on so many different occasions on the national scene as well as in Albany, and he is a force. He certainly has a voice that people listen to, and an important voice in terms of furthering education and economic development. And it's for that reason that I am really so happy to be here this morning in this wonderful facility. My God, I'd not seen it before, but it is beautiful. If I worked here, I'd have trouble concentrating. I'd be looking out the window all day. For those of you on the webcast, I have to tell you, this room is really beautiful. So good morning to all of you. I'm really happy to be here today, and what I'm planning on speaking about is really a response to some of what Les just shared. Very, very good presentation. Thank you very much. Come on, guys, work with me. I think he laid out, thank you, he laid out very well the problem that we are facing, and I have the pleasure of telling you a whole lot about what SUNY is doing in response to this. In my position, the education pipeline, I work with all 64 campuses, our 2-year, 4-year, and university centers, as well as with the 30 community colleges, and what a privilege it is to have the job that I have. And so you're right, the Chancellor has made a real commitment, along with the SUNY Board of Trustees and the 300 community college trustees we have around the state with our community colleges, to not only quality education, but to economic development. And we believe that we are actually the answer to the situation in terms of the workforce, but definitely going hand in hand with economic development. So this is a new pointer. I'm going to give it a shot. Oh, that's not right. Yes, it is. Just wanted to make sure you were concentrating. So what I wanted to do, this is a quick cap, and I was told that is Fred here? I was told was the tallest man in the room was going to tell me how my time is. Ralph. Is Ralph here? Okay, so, because if you weren't here, I could take as long as I wanted. No. So I'm going to, so you tell me when I'm about halfway through, okay? Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about what SUNY is doing on the national stage, a profile of our 30 community colleges, some insights as well as new developments, and also have an opportunity for questions and answers. And let me just say this, because I know we have some partners in the room. The State University of New York is committed to partnerships. That means partnerships with business and industry, with our school districts, with community groups, and with our partners in the private sector, as well as CUNY, the other part of the public sector. No one entity can do it alone. The job is much too big. We are talking about real partnerships. But today it's mostly about, for my remarks, it is mostly about what SUNY is doing and why we believe it's important, because we are hoping to have an even stronger partnership than ever before. So most of this I think you know, but I will just highlight for the purpose of this conversation. We know that at least two-thirds of the jobs now are going to require some college education. In a conversation I had with Arthur, and I have it often with business leaders, they don't just want someone that is skilled. It isn't just having someone who has the skills to do a job. They want an educated workforce, and they want an associate's degree, leading certainly to a 4-year degree and higher level degrees, but many of the jobs that are coming out are requiring a 2-year degree to start. As we look at some of the big industries, and you were certainly mentioning that, Les, I'll just give you 2 examples. Global Foundries, which is up in the Capital District near Albany, Right now, they are looking for 1,800 employees. 1,800, with a projection of perhaps as many as 5,000. The majority of those jobs are going to two-year college graduates. Yes, they are going to be hiring engineers and managers and architects and many other professions as well, but the bulk of the jobs are going to two-year college graduates. Good, high-paying jobs. Laurentian Aerospace at the complete other end of the spectrum, which is in Plattsburgh, New York, on the border on the Canadian border. 900 brand-new jobs for their company. 900 new jobs, and they're not going to find those skilled workers all in Plattsburgh, New York. So much of what I'm going to tell you about is what we consider the power of SUNY community colleges, and how by working together with all of you and our partners around the state, we're going to be able to respond to the regional as well as the national workforce demands. This goes without saying. Of course, having a higher paying job is important to the future of the economy, but it's also very important to people's lives. If you make more money, there's a tendency for less crime, better health, intergenerational literacy, and all the rest of what you know. But we take this very seriously. This piece I'm going to hit on just quickly. You hear the President, the Gates Foundation, on any given day you hear reference to the need for a stronger education pipeline. We need more graduates. And at one time, I remembered hearing that we need 60% more graduates, and I thought they meant that the graduation rate needed to increase. It's not what they meant. They meant 60% more college graduates in our workforce, in our economy, than we've had before. How are we going to get that? How are we going to get those workers at a time when our education pipeline isn't as strong as it should be? This is just a quick glance at our education pipeline today. There are different ways that you can look at the data, you know that. But for every 100 students that enter the 9th grade, and in New York State, that's 225,000 students, about half, give or take, actually graduate from high school in 4 years. About half. Some graduate in 5 years, some drop out and come back, some get a GED. Depending on how you look at the data, it varies. But on average, for the first 100 students in the 9th grade, about half of them actually graduate. Little less than that actually enter college immediately following high school. About a third persist to the second year of college. About a third are actually enrolled a year later. Not to say that they don't leave and come back and that there aren't extenuating circumstances, but about a third of the first 100 students are actually in college 2 years in. How many do you think actually graduate from a 2-year program in 3 years or a 4-year program in 6? None, thank God, it's not that bad. Just a guess, numbers. How many of those 30%, how many do you think actually graduate? 80%? 50? 50's 19 students. 19 students, I'll just move the chair. 19 students out of 100.
You want a handout, Frank?
Necessary. 19 students. Again, not to say that there aren't extenuating circumstances, but that's a pretty grim number. When you're talking about 225,000 students, you're talking about 20% actually make it with a piece of paper in their hand after either 3 years or 6 years in terms of an associate's degree. Now, again, looking at having 60% more graduates in the economy, in the workforce, if we look at New York State, you know high school enrollment is going down. This is not only about students entering college and the workforce right after college, right after the workforce, right after high school, but rather, high school enrollment is going down. So what does that mean? That means that the adult population is more important than ever before. This is not only about students coming to our colleges directly after high school. So, what is the answer? If you pick up any newspaper, CNN, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Newsday, they're talking about community colleges. Community colleges as a very, very important answer to our economic crisis. It isn't that it's the only answer, and it isn't that community colleges haven't been doing this work for years. This is not rocket science, but the attention on community colleges is greater than ever before. Our President Obama, the very first visit that he made to New York State, he visited Hudson Valley Community College, and he talked then about how important it was for our community colleges and what he referred to as a gateway to a better life for millions of Americans. This is about work that has to be done, and it has to be done very quickly. And his second visit this year was actually to Schenectady Community College. In terms of Hudson Valley, he was linked with Global Foundries that I spoke about, and when he was in Schenectady, he was linked with General Electric. Just a highlight to show you how serious this work is. It's not just a speech, it's not just an occasion where you see a headline, but rather there's actually regional work going on around the country with our partners in other parts of the region. So that's, of course, Philadelphia, Connecticut, and other parts. But we have had working groups with the president, with his team, looking at policies that have to be developed. And at the one that they had in February, there were 4 trustees, 4 community college trustees, 12 presidents, 2 system leaders, and 2 major business partners came with us, who are working very closely with us because they take it that seriously. And we also had some legislators. And our governor, isn't that a great picture? He said in his State of the State address, and has said ever since, that he sees higher education as the key economic driver. We were so thrilled that he mentioned that I'll just read his quote, we look to partner with our great SUNY system, especially across upstate New York, in making this a reality. Why? Because SUNY had already started the groundwork talking about economic development. Quality academics and economic development going hand in hand. And of course, we have our strategic plan. I think most of you know about it. I won't spend a lot of time discussing it, but each of these, with a strategic plan, and I am old enough to remember more strategic plans than I care to remember, and they're all prominently placed on a bookshelf somewhere. They're lovely. Some have nicer covers than others, but they never get used. This one is different. This was a working strategic plan, and every day we refer to it because that which is contained in our strategic plan is coming alive, and it's coming alive today in the work we hope to do here with you. But again, an entrepreneurial society, the education pipeline that I just spoke about, an energy smart New York, which so much of that is going on here at Orange County Community College, international, SUNY and the world, as well as a vibrant community and a healthier New York. Those are our major pillars, the major focus of our strategic plan that all 64 campuses are working on together. So just to give you a quick profile of why we're so excited about our community colleges and why we believe that we have the potential to make a difference that perhaps had not been made before. The State University of New York is the largest, most comprehensive higher ed system in the nation. It just is. That's just a fact. You could say California is larger, but they don't have a large system. And we really believe that we are greater than the sum of our parts. By putting the colleges together and working together in terms of quality academics and economic development, we really can make a difference. And if we don't do it, who will? With 30 community colleges across the state, all the way from the tip of Long Island down to the tip of Long Island, all the way to the tip of the Canadian border. We have over 250,000 students, that should say over, not nearly, because our enrollment is on the rise, 27,000 employees, over 1 million degrees granted every year. Certificates are probably just as many in terms of certificates for given jobs, $1.7 billion in annual operating costs. And the last 3, I think, are particularly important. Our community colleges are teacher-centered. Our university centers and our 4-year campuses are more focused on research than our community colleges are. Community colleges are teacher-centered, which is sometimes very, very important to being able to respond quickly to the needs of business and industry. Community-centered. This is an example I give often, that when I go out to visit the community colleges, I see so many people who really do depend on the livelihood of the college for more than what it provides academically, but as an employer, as a vibrant part of the community and a response to economic development. And for years have partnered with business and industry. So we're not starting from scratch, we're building on a strength. This is just a map. The red is just a list of all our community colleges all over the state, but you can see that they're widespread. The red are our community colleges, and those that are in black are our state ops and university centers. I will tell you, I visited every single one this year. And I thought I could do it in 6 weeks. Chancellor Nancy Zimfer, she had her tour of SUNY in, I think, 90 days. And I thought, well, she went to 64 campuses in 90 days. I can do this in, 6 weeks, 30 campuses. No, it took me a year. I spent a full day whenever I could, but for the most part, half days at our campuses to really understand the nature of the work that's being done day in and day out at our fine campuses, but also in partnership with faculty, in partnership with students, in partnerships with the business community, in partnership with neighboring colleges. So in Rochester, it isn't just about Monroe Community Colleges, but it's Rochester Institute of Technology. It's also about Nazareth. Really getting to understand the communities and how together we can achieve this. This isn't something I'll spend a lot of time on. Our enrollment, of course, is growing. So of course, the demands associated with increased enrollment are great, but it also means the potential is tremendous as well. Speaking specifically about some of the strategies that we're involved in with economic development, one of our strategic plans under the education pipeline, you'll see something called SUNY Works. And we already have some of the students putting together their T-shirts. This is about co-op education. Some of the students have something called SUNY Works for You. And it is about credit-worthy experiences with business and industry when students are still in school. Again, something that colleges and universities have been doing forever. We are benchmarking right now Northeastern University as well as Cincinnati University. For years they've done it in the engineering field as well as in others. But right now we're looking at it for all 64 campuses in a number of fields. It helps with retention, but it also helps with economic development. The Lumina Foundation has given us $1 million to start a planning grant, and we have 6 community colleges right now with whom we have started this work, but we will. This is about building for the whole system. The Regional Economic Development Centers, this is just, again, another map of New York, but the piece that I wanted to highlight the most is, of course, the governor has this Regional Economic Development Center table, which is so important. And I'm so pleased that in partnership with so many businesses, other partners in the private sector of higher education, as well as community leaders, we are represented, SUNY is represented on 9 of the 10 regional economic development centers. And of course, the one here in the Mid-Hudson region, we have President Cliff Wood as one of the members. We also have co-chairs in a few of the places, Mohawk Valley in particular, as well as Western New York. Satish Tripathi is the president of the University of Buffalo, and we are, again, we are well represented. What we want to do, though, each regional economic development center is working on the important pieces of economic development in their regions. Understood. But we want to share lessons across the system, not compete with one another, but lessons learned. And we have already seen that happen, and I give credit to President Cliff Wood, who is our president of the New York Association of Community College Presidents, and he's saying, what are some of the lessons we're learning here in this area that would apply to Long Island, that would apply to Rochester, that would apply to Buffalo? There is actually, again, with our commitment to economic development, next week there's going to be a 2-day conference with leaders from really all over the country and a few people from across the globe in Buffalo for 2 days focused on this very issue, university centers as economic drivers. Now, I will tell you that the governor, we had a slide which showed both, and I decided only to make a commercial for SUNY. But the governor is actually having, on the exact same day, he's having his conference on regional economic development centers in Albany, and he got President Clinton to be the keynote speaker. So, I know. So we may lose a few folks from the event in Buffalo, but the bottom line on this is that and on the same day in New York, everyone is talking about the same thing. How can our education community help make a difference for our people? I mean, this is really about getting America back to work. You know, I went to the website. I was looking for something interesting for this presentation, and I did a Google search, and I wanted to identify some of the employees. I know the ones I work with. I mentioned IBM and General Electric and Global Foundries and Laurentian Aerospace and so many others. And I thought, well, you know, I'd seen some things in the news, and I said, oh, let me pull one out. And I remembered there was something on Lockheed Martin that I saw on NBC, where they were saying how they had all these jobs waiting for folks. And so last night, it's probably the last thing I did before I went to sleep, I went on the internet to see if I could find that article. What scared me is I didn't find that article right away. I found so many others. I found Caterpillar, I found Maglite, I found all these different corporations that were saying that they have jobs for skilled workers. And the heading of the NBC news article, maybe some of you saw it with Tom Brokaw, was, you need a job, get some skills. You know, and that's hard, you know, and coming from academia, for me, it's about a college education. It's about a college education with a career opportunity, which is why we say, with our Cradle to Career Network, it's about more students graduating from high school prepared to succeed in college and the workforce, because they go hand in hand. So with that, we have, some of you were involved directly in this, all of our colleges, all of our community colleges around New York State, all of them, applied for what is $500 million as a first run for a federal grant for workforce preparation. SUNY is no exception. We have, in this area, there is a consortium grant, there is another consortium grant in the Rochester area, and there's a very, very large consortium, which we call the SUNY Alliance, which has come together for $50 million of those dollars, and we have over 100 employers and partners at the table. I mentioned some of the ones you see there, but we brought in all of the major sectors, and we did something that we call a hub and spokes model, so that you can see that we brought together all of what I'm speaking about, which is not 1,000 points of light, but focused areas of concentration. We have 26 of our community colleges from around the state involved in this, and we have over 100 employers. And what we did was we focused specifically on certain industries where we believe there is the greatest job growth. So, of course, entrepreneurship, business and hospitality, renewable energy, design, aerospace, nanotechnology, healthcare, and advanced manufacturing. All of the colleges together, and I will tell you, that's hard. It is hard to get three, I'll say myself included, and let's say two of my colleagues in the community colleges, and if we were going to a conference and one evening we decided to all go to a movie, it would be hard for three of us to decide on what to see. For 30 colleges to come together towards the same goal of maximizing our resources towards workforce preparation is unprecedented. It certainly is in the SUNY system. And I'll just give you an example of how this would work. I mentioned Laurentian Aerospace before. It's a really good example. Laurentian Aerospace and its 900 jobs is working with Clinton Community College in Plattsburgh. Well, there are many aerospace facilities around New York State. Suffolk Community College has Grumman. Students could be prepared for a program at Suffolk Community College and know that if they choose, there's a job waiting for them at Laurentian Aerospace and vice versa. We're looking at Global Foundries and nanotechnology and all of the clean rooms that it requires. Every single college does not have to build a clean room. They're expensive and it's a lot of work. But if you have 3, 4, or 5 colleges with a clean room and all students have access to it or are sharing resources, coursework, everything that it would take to finish a program, including online assistance, then you have a hub and spokes model. And again, it isn't place-bound. We're looking again at bridging the gap. So I think I'm pretty much out of time. I want to say thank you, but I do want to close and of course ask if you have any questions. I just want to show you what we consider the power of SUNY, and it really brings to life the hub and spokes model that I was sharing with you. And Les said he's going to cue me up.
Well, we're going to try.
Cue me up.
We're going to try.
On the webcast, that sounds like something else.
I won't even go there.
Come on, you guys are just this early in the morning.
Yeah.
And it'll bring to life again those variables to which I was referring about business and industry and what we believe we have with our colleges. Thank you, Rose.
You know, we were going to have Bill Clinton too, but we opted for Johanna.
Thank you.
Great job, Johanna. Arthur?
Okay, before we move on to the next session, Johanna's going to have to be leaving, so why don't we have some Q&A for Johanna right now, and if we can limit it to...
There are microphones on either side of the aisle. Please feel free to step up to one and come on up.
And please give your name and...
My name is Rich Syrek. I'm at Rockland Community College. I'm the Dean for the Center for Personal and Professional Development. And Johanna, I would ask, your presentation and this work that you're doing, which is really wonderful, so thank you for all of that, talks a lot about high school students and the need to get a degree, you need to get an associate's degree. But there is a very large component of unemployed people who have degrees, who need to be moved into this new technology, into where their jobs are. So I guess it's self-serving a little bit since I'm a non-credit guy. There is an opportunity for non-credit departments to take people with degrees and retrain them into getting into this new world. And I think that I would like to see more of that in the focus that SUNY is doing, what SUNY is working on. Is there something in that way that might be able to be helpful?
So I guess I'll stand here. Yes, I'm glad you asked that. You're taller than I am. So I'm glad you asked that. Two things. I will say that our major objective is for students to have a degree and the ability to enter the workforce with a skilled profession. But two things we're doing. First, the co-op education piece that I just mentioned to you, the students that we are actually focusing in on first, not at the exclusion of others, but those who we're focusing in on first are actually adult students who have 18 credits or more. Some students who have actually dropped out, we're going to be reaching out to them and bringing them back. It is just so sad when you see a student who has 48 credits and was in an associate's degree program and didn't graduate. Students, there's another grant we have with the Lumina Foundation called Win-Win, and it gives us the resources to actually track these students and bring them in. So number one, it is getting to those adult students. That's really important. The second is we are working with our BOCES, as well as, and I was sharing this with some of my colleagues here in the room, as well as with our high schools. With our early college high schools, we are not just dealing, we have 24, by the way, 24 under the SUNY umbrella around the state, partnering with the privates as well as CUNY. But our early college high schools are not just for the students, but we're also working with families. So when you get a student to go back to school and you have a parent take them, often you find that the parent may be interested in going back to college, and again, that's our objective. So on the non-credit end, to respond directly to your question, those are students we're targeting, but our objective is to get them a degree.
Yeah, I was referring mainly to people who already have degrees who have been displaced.
Yes.
And what can we do to move those people from displaced market into a new skill, into something that they don't have their degree in, but they already have a degree?
So the two things, one is the SUNY Works, the co-op ed piece, and the other is the grant that I was speaking about. It's also targeted for those students. Looking at reducing time to degree, especially if you have a student that already has a degree, but they're going to get training in another field. It's about reducing that time with everything from PLA to online learning and so forth. And also, by working together, we don't go through some of the issues you have with mobility.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Over here.
Yes, my name is Floyd Holt. I'm the president of the American Science and Technology Center, New York. We're building kind of a World's Fair, kind of a Epcot prototype to help what you're doing restart the engine for innovation. So I think as educated people, we really appreciate what you're saying here. I'm wondering, how do we collectively address a problem in American culture now that we don't really prize education? We pay our PhDs peanuts. Our students at school are disenfranchised with the schools. They're, in quotes, if you'll pardon the expression, fat, dumb, and happy. They're texting their friends. Social media is out of control. So basically, they really don't get to you. The process is short-circuited. The high schools are really not sending it to you. You saw the graduation rates and so forth. So we're seeing all of that. I'm wondering, how do we then, as a group, restart the engine of innovation and combat our culture where we prize our actors, athletes, and rock stars, and we pay them enormous sums? How do we go against our culture and demonstrate that this is what it's going to take in the age of globalization? So my point is, how do we get the kids to be to be not disenfranchised with the schools? How do we excite them at a young age to want to go to your schools, to go to community and other colleges, and compete in the age of globalization? That's a tough question.
Well, I am glad you gave me such an easy question. Thank you. I don't know if I have the answer as to what we can do to change the culture of our society. I think some of what you say is true. I don't know if to the full extent I agree, but I definitely see some merit in what you've said. I was talking with Arthur earlier about the trip I took to Germany, and I looked at the value of vocational education and the university system, and it was understood that, this is what you do, and you will have an opportunity at BMW or Mercedes-Benz or Siemens. It's a little different here. But this is what I would say to you in response. Two things. I've worked with students all different ages, from the youngest students to, I guess, students my age who are going back to college. And at the end of the day, the thing that almost always matters most is that if a person is going to college, that they believe they're going with a given purpose. Sometimes it is just for enrichment, but more times than not, it's enrichment as well as a career opportunity. It's true for all of us. It certainly was true for me. We have somebody who is we have a pool of drivers in SUNY. And there's a gentleman, I won't say his name, but he's a delightful young man, and he got his master's degree from one of our university centers. I won't say which one. And he was going for a degree in engineering. He didn't finish. He's now part of the driver's pool. He's making a little more than minimum wage. And I didn't know this at the time. So we're in the car, and we're driving, and I said to him, I said, have you ever thought about going back to school? And he said to me, he is in school. He said, I am in school. I'm taking a course here and there and whatever. And I said, and I was trying to encourage him to go to Hudson Valley Community College because I said, you could get a really good job with Global Foundries. You ought to consider getting a 2-year degree. And he said, well, I'm actually going for my master's, which, floored me. So I said, is there a reason why you're doing this job? He said, it's the best job I can find at the best pay possible. And I don't have time for school. I need a job. Now, of course, he and I had a long talk, and he's back in school, and there's more to that story. But the reason I make that analogy is I think that the time has passed where we can assume that because you have a college education, you're going to have a good career. That time has come and gone. You not only have to have opportunities in given fields. You mentioned STEM. We have other people who are going to talk about STEM. But you know what? Almost everything is related to STEM. Almost everything. So I will welcome any ideas you have in terms of changing the culture of our society. But as I said to somebody from the higher ed, adult learning, I forgot what it was, but it was a national network, and they said to me, what was the one thing that I learned since I've been with SUNY? And I said that the connection with economic development is really the answer.
Okay, Johanna, when you finish
I didn't
with-
answer his question, but
Yeah,
maybe
but-
you've got it.
No, when you're finished with it, start working on world peace.
All right.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, my name is John Bavona. I'm a retired surgeon. I enjoyed your hub and spokes model, and I think it may be somewhat idealistic. I picked up 4 of the spokes: the healthcare, aerospace, advanced manufacturing, and renewable energy. And it seems to me that the governmental milieu is very hostile to these areas. You mentioned GE. GE is opening a plant, I believe, in China, going to give them a lot of work, but none here. And I think because of our tax structure, many countries are going overseas, bringing their jobs overseas, which leaves less for the people here. It would seem to me that we have to do something with the way government approaches, because they are making it more difficult here. For example, in healthcare, it's been said that nothing will come out of Medicare. What they'll do is give less to the healthcare providers who are already at bare bones right now. What plan, if any, do you have to change the government's look at providing jobs for people or giving us a healthy milieu? Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I agree with some of what you said as well. And I guess it speaks to why I'm so high, really, on this power of SUNY concept and about the collective influence of us working together. I worked in government for a very long time, and sometimes, let's just say, they're hard to move. But I've also worked with business and industry, and they always say to me, and there's a company really nearby here that said something to me when we were doing some education pipeline work. And they said, Johanna, you're a really nice lady, and, we get that you're working on workforce development and all that's real nice. But if you can't produce the workers we need, we're going elsewhere. And you're right, tax breaks and all the rest matter. Global Foundries wouldn't be in Malta if they didn't get tax breaks. It matters. But at the end of the day, if we don't have a product to compete with, the businesses themselves don't care. And in terms of government reform, I think our voice, if we have a plan and we're able to say, this is what we can do and this is what we need for you to do to help us. I mean, the $50 million grant that I'm talking about, that's federal government. And I think as late as yesterday, there was an attack on it. I mean, there are always new rules, new guidelines, new bills to either take money, put money in to federal initiatives. But if we as a collective body, and I do mean everybody in this room and many people, 20 times over that aren't here, if we have a voice that says this is important and this is going to help our country put America back to work, it's a powerful voice. So thank you for that question.
Diana, we have one more question. This one's from London.
Are you Tobias?
Are you Tobias? Tobias, you're up.
I'm here.
Go ahead. You have a question for Joanna?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I actually wanted to make a quick comment about the question that the gentleman from New York had earlier about how do we tie science in and get particularly the youngsters working and studying, which is probably not only a US phenomenon. It is certainly one in the Western world. I think, from my perspective, and I ought to say that I come out of a entrepreneurial investment banking background, so I have a slightly different perspective to this. So did my picture just disappear?
We still hear you.
We can still hear you. Go ahead.
You're back.
The answer lies very much in society. One of the reasons why Joanna has to have such a hard job trying to get youngsters and even older people educated is because they don't grow up with the right attitude. And that's something to do with parenting, something to do with kindergarten, something to do with transmitting values very early in life. And I don't know how many parents are sitting in the room, but you probably know that if you don't give your child the right tools by the time they're sort of 4 or 5 years old, you've already messed up half of their life.
It's true.
You can see some of this in what we call, or we used to call, the developing countries. Now they're called the BRICS. Very soon they will have overtaken the West. But if you take a look at India or China, how families fight for kindergarten and early school places, and how much education is valued as the greatest good. They all strive very, very hard to become as educated as possible. You see exactly the opposite over here. In the West, we got kids, they've got everything, they got more toys than they can even play with. They get mobile phones very early in life, and they don't even do any sports anymore and become slightly overweight by a time that, in my youth was completely unthinkable. So a lot of the answers probably lie in the way that society deals with early childhood development and early school development. And I don't know how this all works in the US. It's probably not much different to some of the countries here in Europe. But I think a lot of learning has to be done in this respect from countries in a bilateral fashion. So I think the US has to learn from Europe, we have to learn from the US, and that's really where a lot of the secrets lie. And that would probably be my comment in this respect, because I perceive less and less quality coming from young people. There are a lot of young people who are very highly educated, but as we see by the graduation rates, that's dropping fairly quickly.
Well, thank you, Tobias. Any comments, Johanna?
Just one. Thank you, Tobias, as well as for your actually collective questions, because I think that they were similar in nature. Let me just say, Tobias, the very thing that Arthur was referring to, he mentioned that I was in Portland, Oregon, and I just start out by saying there are two ends of the spectrum. And I think your articulation of the same question was very helpful, because we are doing things. SUNY actually is. I mean, when we say commitment to the education pipeline, we're talking cradle to career. So the work that we were doing in Portland is working with school districts really on a national level. We have 8 cradle-to-career networks that have started in just the last year here in New York. You've all heard about the Harlem Children's Zone and Say Yes to Education. It's based on that framework, but without millions and millions of dollars. It's about having communities working together towards the same child and supporting them, but at the earliest stage, from infancy all the way through to career. And I'll just give you one example from that conference that really broke my heart. We were talking about something called Success by 6, which is working with children, working with young mothers. Because again, your families, I can be assured that most of your children, nieces, nephews, they're going to college. They have someone who supports them. We're talking about students who don't have that. So at the earliest stages, a young mother gives birth to a child, and with something called Success by 6, and all that has to happen so that you don't ruin a child's life by the time they're 5 years old. And I remembered one person having a debate at a table, and I'm probably out of time, but having a debate at the table about early childhood, and everybody knows that it's important, and Head Start is just understood, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I heard a story about a woman with whom they worked, who, because of money, had to put her child in a daycare center, one of those unlicensed ones, in a daycare center. And the child was strapped to a stroller all day watching TV until the mother picked her up from work. Well, if that isn't enough to say that enough isn't being done for our future society, this is a 3-year-old child. So cradle to career, all of that's being done from infancy, pre-K, middle school, and everything in between and towards career. But we also have a very impatient society. As we're talking about economic development, while we're doing things with early college high schools, while we're doing things in terms of developmental ed and all of the rest, for those who are already for those who are coming into the pipeline, there are those who are already here. And so for STEM, there's something I don't want to, especially not on a webcast, but there's something very exciting that we're going to be doing at SUNY with the STEM Empire State Network. I'll just leave it with that. And working with the students that are already here that need to get there. So I just want to say something. This is obviously a very committed audience. You listened very patiently. You're here because this is something you care very much about. And I'd like to say thank you, because this is hard work. No one entity can do it alone. We really need you, and I think that together we can do more. So I thank you so much for the time, the opportunity to hear from you, and I look forward to working with folks here and around the world. Very exciting to get a question from London. Thank you.
Okay, let's give another round of applause for Johanna. We are very lucky to have you here and appreciate you choosing us over the other opportunities that you've had. I would ask at this time for the panelists to come forward. Tobias, you can stay where you are. And while they're coming up, I'll just introduce who they are, and then I'm going to take the time to read their bios. We have Roger Norton talking on the expanding impact of IT in new job creation. Pradeep Halder talking on energy innovations leading to the 21st century jobs. We have Clayton Besh. Am I saying that right, Clayton? Besh. What is ESD doing to aid in innovation and job development? And then we have Richard Frederick, what entrepreneurs require to stimulate growth. And Tobias, who you just heard, will be speaking demands on higher education to produce entrepreneurs. Now let's begin with Roger. Dr. Norton is the Dean of the School of Computer Science and Mathematics at Marist College, where he has been for 31 years. He received his BS degree in mathematics from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, his MA in mathematics from Brandeis University, and his doctorate in computer science from Syracuse University. Dr. Norton is the recipient of numerous grants from both New York State and the National Science Foundation. Currently, he is working on NSF grants related to increasing undergraduate students in computer science and technology, another developing a national community, which currently has over 900 members, looking into how enterprise computing fits into the college curriculum, and another working with the College of Nanoscience and Engineering at the University of Albany, leveraging energy and nanotechnology, and finally 2 NSF grants to build and develop the Enterprise Computing Laboratory at Marist that can be used to do applied research with New York State companies. Dr. Norton is the director of Marist Institutes on Data Center Professionals, a nationally recognized certification organization. Dr. Norton also is the director of the NISTAR Designated Center for Collaboration on Demand Community at Marist. Dr. Norton works closely with the IBM Corporation on a number of Marist-IBM joint studies that explore the use of cutting-edge technology. Then we have Pradeep. Dr. Pradeep Halder serves as the Vice President of Clean Energy Programs at the College of Nanoscience and Engineering, CNSE, at the University of Albany, SUNY. And as Chief Operating and Technical Officer of the newly formed $300 million U.S. Photovoltaic Manufacturing Consortium in partnership with Semitech, he is Professor of the Nanoeconomics and Nanoengineering and Head of the Nanoeconomics Constellation at CNSE. He is also Director of the Energy and Environment Technology Application Center and Executive Director of the New Energy New York at CNSE. He has been actively involved in establishing industry, university government partnerships with academia, venture capitalists, private investors, entrepreneurs, government agencies, as well as small and large corporations that foster a robust and innovative ecosystem leveraging state-of-art nanotech capabilities to enable and shape the future of clean energy technology. Dr. Halder's activities are centered around world-class technology development, R&D, entrepreneurship, and commercialization of high-tech and clean energy ecosystems. He has over 25 years of industrial academic experience in these areas with considerable expertise in building open innovation capabilities, strategic alliances, business and commercialization. He manages iClean, the Clean Energy Incubator, the National Science Foundation Partnerships for Innovation Initiatives, serves as founder, board member, and executive director of the New Energy Consortium, New Energy in New York Consortium. He is an author and co-author of over 250 reviewed technical papers, conference proceedings with several patents issued and pending. Dr. Halder is a fellow of the Institute of Physics and recipient of the President's Excellence on Research Award and the Business Review's 40 and Under. I don't know how many are 40 and under here, but he is Business Review 40 and Under upcoming individuals in New York Capital Region.
I've got socks 40.
Dr. Halder has his PhD from Northeastern University and an MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. Okay, Clayton. Clayton Bausch was raised in the Capital Region. He did his undergraduate at Hamilton College in Central New York. After years of advanced education in Asia, earning a master's at Nagasaki University and a PhD at Tokyo University, Clayton's focus turned to finance and investment. Experiencing the growth and evolution in Japan's bubble market and later in the emerging markets, he crossed from equity research to sales to the global investment community. He then moved to the venture capital world, working with SoftBank, worldwide venture capitalist network, for a number of years. After consulting for funds in the US, Japan, and UK, he most recently ran the Asian office for New York State ESDC, Economic States Development Corporation, in Tokyo, introducing New York State companies to sales opportunities in Japan and Korea, and introducing Japanese companies to strategic opportunities in New York State. Clayton is currently the director of New York State Small Business Technology Investment Fund. Okay, Richard Frederick, director of the Emerging Ventures Ecosystem at Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, is an experienced C-level executive and serial entrepreneur with over 35 years' experience. He spent the last 15 years of his career building and growing early-stage companies. He served as a mentor and coach to over 100 companies in the past 5 years. In 2001, he co-founded Autotask, one of the nation's first pure play software I have to say this slowly, it's a tongue twister, the first pure play software as a service company. He played a major role in raising over $14 million for Autotask from angel to seed investors, as well as A and B round venture funds. In 2008, he co-founded whateverybabyneedstoknow.com, an internet-based retail and social networking site providing organic products and content to new moms and infants from birth to age 4. The founders bootstrapped the initial funding and now rely on revenue to fuel their growth. Ms. Frederick also is involved in teaching at the graduate college level at a number of local business schools in upstate New York, including Union Graduate College MBA program, RPI's Lally School, where he is also an entrepreneur in residence, and has recently formed relationships with the undergraduate and graduate programs at Empire State College. His main area of concentration is on entrepreneurism and in all aspects of developing business plans with a concentration of financial management, operations, and marketing. He has an MBA from the University of Buffalo with an undergraduate degree in marketing and finance. And Tobias. Following business studies, Tobias studied working in industry at Siemens and Stettner Group in Germany and France before being recruited by investment bank S.G. Warburg in London. From the 1990s onward, he was a successful entrepreneur and investment management and telecommunications before founding specialist private equity and venture capital firm Momentum Capital in 2002. In addition to running Momentum Capital, he is a CEO of IP commercialization company ScienceWork Ventures PLC. Coming from many generations of entrepreneurs, Tobias is passionate about education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I apologize for mumbling through some of that, but I wanted everyone to hear the background of this panel. It's very impressive, as well as people in this room have very impressive resumes and are entrepreneurs and have some innovation. So with that, Ralph, could you stand up again? This is Ralph back there. He's going to be our enforcer to see if we can keep this on time. I think if we can, limit your comments to about 10 minutes or whatever you need within that time frame, so we have enough time for Q&A at the end of this. And welcome all, and I'll let you start in the order you are seated from right to left. From my right, from your left.
Well, welcome everybody. I think maybe about 5 minutes of my 10 minutes I was used up introducing me. I sent them some info, said use what you want. I didn't expect them to use it off. Well, apparently we're not queued up there. So,
Wait a second. Jeremy, can we get back to the... There you go.
So, anyways, I want to talk a little bit about what Marist College is doing with respect to information technology and how it affects economic development. This actually here is the vision statement of Marist College. One of the things that you'll notice, I have skills there written in red. Our mission statement for the past 10 years was everything up there except for the skills part. What we've realized is that no matter whether you're majoring in communication, business, fashion design, students need to understand technology. So technology has really gone across our entire curriculum, not just in my school, the School of Computer Science and and computer science and information technology. Marist has been extremely successful in terms of producing leaders in the area of information technology. This is just sort of a subset of some of the, the Marist College graduates in terms of, what they're doing. Goldman Sachs, we have lots of people at Goldman Sachs. We have a managing partner of Goldman Sachs, the graduate of my program, managing director of technology, the vice president of worldwide network infrastructure, graduated from our program. IBM, we have tons of Marist folks there, including general managers, 9 vice presidents at IBM are actually from Marist College. EMC, executive vice president, the CTO of EMC is a graduate of our program. Director of West Coast Research, just graduated from our program just a few years ago. iSpace, I put iSpace up there. iSpace is actually a startup company. It's listed as one of the top 25 fastest growing companies in Los Angeles. I listed the president, the CEO, and the CFO, all graduates of our program. So technology plays a major role in terms of success of our students. These are our programs. I'm not going to tell you, go through our programs, but within the School of Computer Science, we have computer science, information technology, information systems, both at the graduate and at the master's level. I just want to mention, these are the goals of the program. That are listed, in our self-study associated with our programs. But I want to mention, 2 things. Number 1, prepare students for employment in technology field or for graduate study in the technology field. And really, the vast majority of our students are actually going off and working, in the field of technology as compared to going to graduate school, simply because of the fact that, they get extremely high-paying jobs with, simply a bachelor's degree. And one of the reasons why we believe at Marist College that our students have been extremely successful is because of that skill-based proficiencies that we see in the second goal that we have. And we develop that skill-based proficiency in 2 ways. One is part of the classroom. In the classroom, there's the theoretical part of whatever topic, but in every one of our classes, there's also the applied component associated with it. And then the other way in which we do it is our students do internships. Our students work with local companies. They work with companies, worldwide, getting out there and working with these companies. And in a number of cases, they've worked with startup companies. They've gone on to be hired by those startup companies. A good example, just 2 years ago, one of those companies, up in the Albany area, which our students worked, ended up getting, bought by Google. Unfortunately, our relationship with them, we did not own a cut of that company. It would have been very helpful. One of the things that we also work on is in terms of workforce development. A number of years ago, Marist College received a National Science Foundation grant for what's called Partnership for Innovation. Matter of fact, just 2 years ago, we also, I'm a co-PI on a PFI grant working actually with Pradeep. And just as a little PR, on October 11th, there is actually an event, an ASHRAE event, sponsored by SUNY Nanoscience and Marist College and the National Science Foundation on efficiency in data centers. And I know a number of you folks here are actually in that particular field, so remember that date. So one of the things that we also do is in terms of workforce development. We've received lots of funding to work on workforce development. And these programs that I have here, I'm not going to go through the details associated with those, but those are really for 2 groups of people. One is our students, register in those programs, get certificates in a variety of different areas, but also in terms of people trying to develop new skills in terms of getting jobs. The jobs out there, are indeed there in terms of information technology. Somebody mentioned about, companies going overseas in terms of, in terms of their companies. One of the things about the United States is approximately 15% of students in the United States actually study in the area of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. You go to China, you go to India, it's 85%. And so the workforce is not really being developed here. If you look at the last report by the U.S. Department of Labor, they listed the top 10 growth areas in the United States over the next 10 years. 3 of those areas are actually in information technology. More than half of them are actually in STEM areas. So it is a growth area, and we need to figure out, as Floyd mentioned, how do we get people, the younger students, to actually, when they're going on to college, be interested in those particular areas. It's a major challenge. Anyways, again, just a list of some of the, the workforce development that we did with the National Science Foundation on Partnership for Innovation. This is actually one of our biggest areas. We also got additional funding just a few years ago to create the community, the enterprise computing community. We actually started out with 16 members, 8 from academia, 8 from industry. At this particular point, it's actually over 900 members, worldwide who belong to that, looking at how do we can create the next generation of people working in the area of enterprise computing. If you look at our program, we sent hundreds of folks through our workforce development program, but not only here in the United States, but we actually have a large number of students going through those programs actually from countries around the world. These are some of the countries. I mentioned that one of the things that we do with respect to our students is we involve them in what we call active learning, which is really that lab component. We want our students to, when they graduate, to not only have the theoretical basis, which is extremely important, but we want these students to be able to be immediately productive when they're employed. About 15 years ago, I did a research paper on the changing expectations of employees in IT. It used to be, you got a job at IBM, the first thing they did is they put you through a year of training, to try to wash out whatever you learned at college and learn their new way. That's no longer the case. When you come on board, they want you to be immediately productive. There may be some training associated with it, but when you go on that interview, they want a well-balanced individual, that we know, but they also want them to have the skills to be able to become immediately productive. This is just a list of companies that we do. We've done some internships with. Those are some of the higher end type companies, but we also have our students doing internships with local companies. The ones in red there actually. Most of our students are actually doing their internships between their junior and senior years. The ones there in red, Apple, Microsoft, UBS, Intel, these were some students who did internships this summer. Microsoft, our student there was flown out to Washington for an interview, flown out there for the job, for the internship put up by Microsoft. At the end of the internship, that person was given a job offer. So that person is spending their senior year at Marist College with a job afterwards at Microsoft. Same thing in Apple, UBS, Intel, same balls. I'm not sure how productive they're going to be during that senior year, but some other things. The NSF STEM scholarship. One of the things is the National Science Foundation is very, very much interested in reversing that trend of 15% people going into the STEM area. One of the things that we received from the National Science Foundation is STEM scholarships. We actually offered 12 full scholarships to students to major in computer science and information technology. When I say full scholarships, it was full scholarships, room, board, tuition. They got a computer. The students, they were extremely good, doing extremely well. And we continued that for a second year this year. This is very important to local businesses. We received funding from the National Science Foundation to build a laboratory at Marist College to do applied research. And applied research is really in the area of working with companies to help companies figure out how to use technologies to help their companies grow. We built the lab. It's in the beautiful Hancock building. The Hancock building is absolutely beautiful. But we also received an NSF MRI grant, and the MRI grant put equipment in that laboratory, and this is information technology equipment, and again, with a mandate that we work with New York State companies to help them figure out how to use technologies to have their companies grow. Part of this equipment that we're actually receiving is a Z Enterprise computer with what's called a ZBX extension. We will be probably one of the only places in the Hudson Valley, other than IBM, that actually has a Z Enterprise computer. There's a data center people here. Do you have a Z yet? Blue Hill has a Z? The Z Enterprise? Uh-huh. So, second. Another grant that we're hoping that we're going to be receiving is the NSF CE21 grant. And this is to exactly address the issue that was brought up related to trying to get people interested in information technology, computer science. You cannot do it with the AP course in high school. By the time somebody decides to take the AP course, they've already decided that that's going to be their area. This is actually, it's a large grant. It's about, I think it's $1.7 million. We're partnering with other universities across the country, but this is really to introduce a course at the junior high or perhaps first year in high school that relates to information technology, computation, in terms of how it's being used in other areas. So the people will have a physicist developing a module on physics and how information technology and computation. We'll have somebody in fashion design. We have somebody in communication. We have people in biology. There will be actually 16 modules that are developed, and they'll focus on particular areas and then talk about how information technology plays a role in that particular area. And one of the companies that we've been working with tremendously is, the IBM Corporation. This is actually from the IBM deck of slides that they use to promote what we do at Marist College with respect to them. And we do this with IBM, but we also do this with other companies. A new thing you probably all heard about, of course, is the Economic Development Council that was created by the governor. The president of Marist College is actually the co-chair of the Mid-Hudson Regional Council. I was actually just appointed to be the co-chair of the IT Data Center Cluster here in the Mid-Hudson region. The other co-chair is Michael Gable. He was the vice president of STG Systems Agenda Delivery. He's in charge of all software systems related to all the different platforms within IBM. I became the co-chair of this last Friday. Yesterday we had a meeting to discuss what the state wanted from us. They told us what they wanted. They said, oh, by the way, it's due by the end of day on Thursday. So my meeting was yesterday. It's due by the end of day on Thursday. One of the things that we have, they gave us a template. There's actually a number of people in this room who are actually on this working group with me. But one of the things that they gave us is actually a template to sort of describe different types of projects that might make sense here in the Hudson Valley, and what type of strengths we have, what types of weaknesses, is there infrastructure we need. Now remember, it's only related, my group is only related to IT and data centers. There are other groups in agriculture and other groups in tourism and but there is indeed a form, and if anybody is interested in contributing to our group, I can actually email you this form. You can fill out this form. You need to get it to us by Thursday morning, the break of dawn. Otherwise, we won't be able to use it because, as I said, our report is due by the end of the day on Thursday. So this is certainly something that we would love to get input from everybody in this particular group. And that's it.
Where's your presentation?
Top right-hand corner. You gotta get out of here. No, it's not at the bottom.
It's not.
Yeah, top right. While he's setting that up, can you hear me back there?
You're done.
Okay. What I want to do first of all is thank the organizers of this workshop, this breakfast workshop, to invite me. I see a lot of people in the audience that I've worked with in the past, including Les Newman. We've collaborated, as he indicated, in the incubator that we have across the entire Tech Valley region. We work very closely with Roger Norton at Marist on some NSF grants. He's mentioned that already. I see Jim Grolinger back there. We work closely on the Clean Energy Alliance, which is a nationwide network on clean energy incubation. And there's several others, so forgive me if I don't mention your name, of course. Quick couple of questions. How many of you have actually visited and been to the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering? Raise hands. Okay, so there's quite a few actually that haven't visited and seen our place. So I'll try and give you a little bit of a tutorial too. Hopefully it won't take too much time. But my talk today is focused primarily on energy innovations leading to 21st century jobs. That's the title that was given to me, so hopefully, thank you, Les. I mean, hopefully I sort of try and address the points that you want me to make as part of this discussion here. Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to focus some of this discussion primarily in New York State, because all of us here, I presume, are New Yorkers. I mean, we do stuff that's more at a national level as well as at a global level, but I'll focus it on the New York State level. If you look at clean technology, it is a statewide industry. There are high-tech, green-collar jobs, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. If some of you didn't know this, we're the third largest state in terms of consumption of energy. We spend, as New Yorkers, we probably spend close to $80 billion a year. This is $80 billion, significantly more than the state budget itself. Well, large percentage of the state budget. It's not the state spending the money, it's us spending the money on energy-related activities. It's close to $80 billion. More interestingly, 70% of all the energy that we consume comes from outside the state. We don't produce it within the state itself. So a lot of our own money is going outside of the state. It's going to Canada, it's going to other states that are producing the energy and providing it to us. So from a deployment standpoint, we use a lot. From an intellectual asset base, we have a ton of universities. You heard about SUNY, there's a lot of other private institutions as well. And there's a lot of manufacturing companies too that are actually interested in clean tech. I mean, at last count, if you take pure clean tech companies, there's close to 300 of those in New York State alone, most of them in the upstate region. And there's the development piece as well in terms of workforce development and job growth and things like that we can talk about particularly. I don't know if any of you have seen this. That's sort of the good news, bad news. This is the real good news. This was actually announced 2 months ago. If you guys haven't seen this yet, I would absolutely recommend that you actually look up this report. There's a Brookings Institution report that came out 2 months ago, and it didn't surprise us. We knew this already, but for the first time we're seeing that at a national level, New York State is getting recognized. You hear a lot about what's going on in California and Silicon Valley and all these other places, but New York is for the first time being recognized by a national institution report that says, the table on the top, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things on the table. They actually went and did a survey of the 100 top metropolitan regions in the entire country. And if you see, New York, Northern New Jersey, Long Island is #1 in terms of the number of clean tech jobs that they have in that region, okay? Close to 150,000 clean economy jobs in the New York City area itself. Second really important point is the table at the bottom, and the Albany-Schenectady-Troy region is rated #1 in the percentage of clean economy jobs that exist. This is nationwide. This is not just New York. This is, complete U.S. 6.3% of all the jobs in the Albany-Schenectady region are related to clean tech. So this is the good news piece. I mean, the fact that New York is leading, if not being at the blazing edge of the trail in terms of clean tech kind of activities. There's a small chart on the left-hand side too, and I think Roger addressed this. If you look at the number of jobs that are related to, the largest number is obviously information technology. The bar on the right is clean tech. So in terms of the number of jobs that are out there for people to grab onto, or even looking out into the future, what kind of jobs are going to exist? Clean tech is number 2, and growing at a very, very high rate, of course. So let's take a step back and let me sort of tell you who we are from the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering. Just a very quick update on what we do. We have been been there, done that. Over the last 10 years, we have been really changing the paradigm of how education affects jobs and economic development. And it's a really true success story. In fact, in the first week in October, we have the National Academy of Science that's coming over to us, and they're going to do an actual report for Congress saying, you know, what has actually happened and how it has successfully been implemented and how that model can be used across the nation from a job growth standpoint. So we've built an infrastructure that's fairly unique. We have a ton of companies. We work with close to 250 companies, and a lot of them all over the world. And more importantly, they are based all over the world, but they're all coming to us and setting up shop at our facility. When I started there about 10 years ago, there were about 50 of us, and there was none of these buildings. There was just the corner building on the right-hand side. Today, we have close to 2,800 employees altogether, just in the last 10 years alone. In my view, it's probably the fastest ever, you know, if you don't consider the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, this is one of the fastest growth from a visionary standpoint, what has actually happened and deployed. There's been over 7 billion. That number is now, I mean, every time I turn around, the overall investment grows even further. That number is now close to $8.5 billion in investments that have gone into the entire infrastructure and facilities. Now, there was initial investment made by New York State, which is to the tune of about close to $1 billion, but that has multiplied itself. You can see $7.5 billion has been invested by the private sector alone into what we're trying to do. So just in terms of our impact, it's not just in the capital region. I mean, starting all the way from the capital region itself, the hub, the technology hub that we're really creating. And what we're looking at doing is creating a complete ecosystem. So this is not just doing academic education for education's sake. We are a university. We're part of the State University of New York. And we have to look at it from a much broader, what we consider an innovative ecosystem. So we call all the things that we do an ecosystem. Education is a small piece of it. If we don't define the other pieces of it, it's hard to create a success story or an economic development story. So being the hub in Albany, our first interactions have obviously been in this region and with the IBM East Fishkill manufacturing facility. We partnered with the Arsenal over also in the capital region. Global Foundries you've heard about several times already. They're adding a ton of jobs up in the Saratoga region. We also have a partnership in Utica, New York. We're expanding our footprint, and we're looking at hopefully some manufacturing company as well as the SUNY Utica campus becoming one of the spokes for the hub that we are talking about. In Syracuse, we have a partnership where we're helping them with their incubation facility in the city of Syracuse itself, and Lockheed Martin's electronics park. It used to be the old GE facility, GE Electronics facility, if you drove down 90 over there, if you remember that. And more recently, we've also taken over the Infotonics foundry in Rochester. There's a center of excellence called the Infotonics Center, which is now under our capability. And all of these are now at full throttle and are growing at a very, very rapid pace. So our impacts have been pretty significant. Some of these I've already mentioned to you. The fact that within our facility itself, there's 250 partners, 2,500 jobs. If you look at it from a statewide impact standpoint, since the last 2 years, there's been close to 12,000 jobs that have been created or retained, over $1 billion in wages, $20 billion in investments, and we're expecting to continue to grow. In fact, there's construction going on our campus that's going to increase the footprint of what we have, the capabilities, by at least another 60 or 70%, and the number of jobs at our site is going to go to close to 4,000 in the next 3 to 4 years. That's what we're actually predicting in terms of what's actually going to happen at our facility. So enough of the marketing activities for what we are actually doing here, just this one activity. This is what we call the ecosystem that I talked about. There is the university research, the education. We spend a ton of time. We heard about K through 12 education and things like that. We can't do education the way we've been doing it before. We got to change it entirely. What we've done at the K through 12 level is we get the kids to come over and spend an entire day or a week at our campus. Annually, we get about 20,000 kids that come through our campus. And after they're done, they're sold. This is what they want to do. They go home and they say, this is exactly what we want to do. So you got to make them feel the science and technology piece. It's not trying to drum it down in school and say, this is what you need to learn. And we've been very successful in terms of doing that. So that's part of the ecosystem, of course. And then there's the incubation piece, the startup companies, the entrepreneurial side of things. And then there's the industry scientists. So you got to bring all of these along all together. You can't say, if I do this, they will come. You have to look at the entire, vision, the cycle, the ecosystem of what we're trying to do. So coming back to green jobs again, we did a survey. This is a partnership between us, the New York State Department of Labor, SUNY at Stony Brook, and the City University of New York. There was an extensive survey that we did in terms of what are the potential green energy jobs that could be in New York, or that exist today and that could be tomorrow in New York. So we looked at a variety of different areas, some of the examples I mentioned over there, and we also focused primarily on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and identified some skills and the training. And there's a report actually that is not out yet. It should be out in the next month or so. I think the URL is going to be newyorkgreenjobs.org if you're interested. It will be managed by the New York State Department of Labor. So what we did there was a survey where we actually sent emails out, as well as the actual full survey out, to 20,000 businesses across New York State. Some of them are in the clean tech business, some of them are not. So if you look at the real opportunity, on the chart on the left basically tells you, broken out by different categories. There's the construction trades, the building services, the professional services, and component manufacturing. The percentage of clean energy or green tech jobs in existing jobs is very small, right? I mean, a lot of them say, well, we've heard about green, but we don't know what it is. We don't do anything in that area at all. So I look at it as the glass is half full. There's an opportunity to fill it completely and say, look, we're going to focus on a lot of these other things, energy efficiency, renewable energy related activities, etc. Now we focused only on 4 industry clusters. There's more. I mean, we could be spending a lot of time doing this kind of a survey, but we had a limited time and a limited budget, and we really wanted to get down to the nitty-gritties of what's actually going on in the state. In terms of what to expect in the next 5 years or so, these are some results of the survey. These are people telling us. This is not stuff that we've come out with. I've selected just a couple of areas that indicate that there's really high growth potential in terms of training opportunities. If you're interested in this area, in clean tech area, what do we have to do? So in the component manufacturing technology sector, there's a whole list of these. Okay, I'm not going to read them out in detail, but you can see the top 4 or 5 are, they expect 50% growth in a lot of those specific types of job opportunities. And the report will be available soon, so you got to bear with me here. There's another area. Okay.
Shake it. Point towards, get closer to the PC itself.
It's frozen. Couldn't handle the large file.
What did you do? What did you do?
I hope you didn't press that do not touch button on there.
Boy, it's really frozen.
Is it going to blow this place up? Is that happening next?
We have an IT person in the house.
Here, let me try this.
It's frozen. I'm going to have to turn it off and re-cue.
Okay.
Now let's see how you can dance.
All right. Can I get on the table and dance? No. All right. So just in summary, the survey was a very, very useful tool. What that tells us is where to focus our efforts in terms of what we're trying to do. And as I said, so that was just examples of the activities that we're trying to do there. Now, another area that we're focused in on at the college is a new area that we're diversifying into quite a bit. We were recently... It's still frozen.
It's not happening.
Okay, so I'll just say a couple more things and then we'll move on. The other area, in addition to nanotechnology, we talked about from a clean tech perspective, we have the U.S. Department of Energy and the federal government that has now partnered with us. I mean, they see the model that we've created here and that has worked so successfully in nanotechnology and semiconductors. And back in April, we announced that we're going to build an ecosystem around clean tech focused primarily on solar technologies. And what that means is there's 3 areas that we've identified, and I would have showed them on the chart here. The 3 areas that we've identified are very early stage entrepreneurial growth opportunities. So we're providing funding like $50K or $100K type funding to startup companies that are interested in entering the pipeline for commercializing solar-based technology. So that's one activity. The second activity, which is the incubation activity, which we've obviously partnered with Les and his team over here on, is the incubation side. So once the companies, the student-run businesses, or at a very early stage, they've shown some proof of feasibility, then we help them through the business development process and the incubation process to get them to the next level. On the third level, what we're doing is we've established what we call the Photovoltaic Manufacturing Consortium. So all that I showed you related to what we're doing in nanotechnology and the semiconductor nanotechnology-related activities that we've built, we're looking at trying to duplicate that in the solar technology space. So we have a total project funding over 5 years of roughly about $300 million. A lot of it is coming from private investments again. A lot of the industry partners that already exist within our facility that are involved in semiconductor technologies are looking also at diversifying into those spaces, and they've said that we would really like to partner with you in those spaces. So that is just another example of what we're trying to do, and we're trying to help the region and the state along from an economical development perspective. Just in summary, what we really have to do is think about the traditional model of getting faculty and professors to come in and teach courses, and their tenures are based on how many papers they actually publish and how many courses they actually teach. We have gotten rid of a lot of the criteria at our college. We're changing the paradigm. We're telling them, look, the faculty themselves need to be completely entrepreneurial in nature. You guys got to think about how you can either create jobs, how you can do additional startup companies yourselves, how you can start companies, how many patents you can apply for, how many patents are getting transferred. We're giving tenure to our faculty based on those criteria as opposed to the traditional, publish or perish type criteria. And that's changing the mentality. Our students themselves, we've started an undergraduate program, and there are a couple of course elements in our engineering and science program that they're required to take on entrepreneurship and business acceleration and things like that. So that's what we really need to do. That's what we need to think about, how we actually change some of these things. That's fine. I think I've sort of covered it all. I didn't want to take too much more time, but
now I'm done.
Thank you very much.
You see, we have our ways. If you go too long, we shut down your presentation. Clayton, you want to use this mic? Okay.
I was going to just sort of, I was asked to give an overview of what ESD shares for innovating jobs and businesses here in New York State. Right now, ESD is sort of the umbrella word for the Department of Economic Development and the Empire State Development Corp. Most of all this information is available on New York Loves Biz and esdc.ny.gov. What I'm not going to talk about is the regional development councils. The co-chairmans are from the academic and the business communities, and you guys would know more about it than I do. We look at that as more as facilitators for that effort. We look forward to whatever decisions come out of it. The main resource I would like to talk about right now is the ESDC regional offices. Your local one is over in the Stewart, I always call it Stewart Air Force Base, but over at Stewart. As you try to develop, your companies and look to New York State for New York State resources, those guys are professionals. They've seen it all at least a couple of times. So I can suggest that you go and visit with them. And there are similar offices throughout the state. They would focus mostly on tax credit opportunities, loans, loan guarantees, those sorts of things that maybe the later stage companies would be interested in, not so much the earlier stage companies. Other resources that the ESDC supports are the CAT programs, the Centers for Advanced Technology and the Centers for COEs, Centers of Excellence. Those are research facilities in the universities all across New York State. We're looking at a variety of technologies, from clean energy that Pradeep Group does in SUNY Albany, chip fab down in Binghamton, healthcare, environmental materials. So if your company is looking to improve or tweak their technologies, these facilities are there to public-private consortiums to work with you to make a better, faster, cheaper solution. I strongly suggest, if you have those needs, to talk to them. So for my CV, I'd worked with the International Group. The International Group helps New York State companies, particularly to export more. And when I was working in Tokyo, to a whole variety of companies, from food companies in New York City to technology companies, and then also to try to introduce strategic partnerships with foreign companies to grow. I think one of the greatest opportunities that I saw when I was in Tokyo was very similar to our challenges. The small and medium-sized companies, the family companies, the technology companies in both Japan and Korea and Taiwan, we're looking for partners. And we have the similar companies here in New York State that would look for opportunities to partnership, to share product line, to share technology, to share markets. So those are the sort of things that the New York State ESDC international groups can work with you to do. The other funding thing that we do for companies is to fund the RTDCs. And you folks should be familiar with the Hudson Valley Technology Development Center. I worked for CEG, the Center for Economic Growth, up in New York, up in Albany area. And those are, again, public-private consortiums that help regional companies improve their efforts, both in training sometimes and other resources that I'm sure if you contact them, they can help you with. Now, getting more into what I do, there's a bit of gossip I can share with you. It's something called the Innovation Funds. This is an effort now, and we're putting the RFP together for regional seed funds to be sponsored by some Fed money that we've gotten, and we're coordinating that. That would be an effort to identify 4 or 5 seed funds, either regional or industrial focused across the state, that would invest in early stage pre-revenue companies. If any of your organizations think that you're qualified to manage those funds, keep an eye out for the RFPs. I've been trying to make sure that it doesn't go to the usual suspects, but it is at least other groups, universities, regional centers, incubators, can also consider that opportunity. And I think we often talk about seed funding, funding being one of the challenges of innovative companies that innovative companies have, and hopefully this is one of the ways that we can meet that challenge. And now, finally, we get down to what I do, which is I run the Small Business Technology Investment Fund. It's a 30-year-old evergreen fund, last funded back in '95. We've been living off our successful investments ever since. We've been buying low and selling high. It's a statewide technology fund. We've invested in things from expensive long-term drug solutions to an inflatable life jacket, to renewable energy solutions, to alternative materials, a whole variety of things. And look forward to continuing to do that. We're an early stage fund. We're post-revenue, post-prototype, but we like to say we're the earliest post-revenue fund in the state. We have a requirement of 3-to-1 outside investment to each one of our investing. And as such, as I look to what you can do for us is help me with deal flow. So if you have any ideas, any companies that you think fit that requirement and have the need, I'm happy to talk to them. And part of what I do besides talk about possible funding is introducing to alternative funding and other resources. And as a segue, I will introduce you to Dick.
Good morning. Dick Frederick. You heard my introduction. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an educator. I'm a venture capitalist. And I run a business incubator. So I have a lot of hands and a lot of pies. But for the last 15 years, I spent most of my career working directly with early stage companies. So let me take just a couple minutes and talk about what it is we're doing here at RPI. If we can get this to work. So our mission at the incubator, which is called the Early Ventures, Emerging Ventures Ecosystem, is to turn entrepreneurs' dreams into reality by accelerating the commercialization of inventions out of the university and into the marketplace. And you heard about the university system. We have 23 colleges and universities in our region. We work closely with the majority of them to identify opportunities, and our incubator doesn't only focus on RPI-centric activities. It includes anyone who wants to come into the incubator. So it's pretty broad-based. So we have an ecosystem that's physically located down at 216 River Street in downtown Troy. We used to have a brick-and-mortar facility, which we no longer have. And we got out of the real estate business because the focus was on collecting rents and not on building businesses. And so what we've done now is we've started to look at opportunities to fill vacant business, vacant real estate down in Troy. And so that is primarily where we focus our attention. We have a close affiliation with a number of the centers of excellence, which I'll touch base on later on for a minute, in RPI. And we also have affiliations with the other business incubators in the region through an organization that we put together a little while ago called Accelerate 518. There are 8 business incubators in the region, some private and some affiliated with other organizations. We all have very different characteristics, and we try to work together collaboratively to use those incubators in ways that can help accelerate the growth of our companies. So we collaborate with students to bring more students' involvement into the programs. We also collaborate with each other in terms of the ability to leverage our wet labs, our dry labs, our centers of excellence, all of the things that we have at the various locations to try to bring those businesses to the fore and commercialize more activity. So we opened for business early in 1980, first college-based incubator in the country. There have been 8 directors over the last 31 years. And some of our notable successes are companies that you may or may not know of, but Albany Molecular Research owns Alarest, a fairly large company in Albany, public company. Vicarious Visions is a student company that started in the incubator, was sold a couple of years ago to Activision, and if you have any children, you're probably familiar with some games like Tommy Hawk and Guitar Hero. Those are programs that came out of Vicarious Visions. First Playables is a company that is now doing a lot of the applications for Disney Corporation, female-owned organization with about 75 employees in the gaming business. Bullex and Ecovative came out of the classroom, from the classroom into our business incubator and into reality. Both of those companies are making money and in very interesting spaces. Bullex does educational programs for fire safety training, and Ecovative has a product that replaces styrofoam that is a mixture of some agricultural products, including mushrooms. And so it's interesting growth. We introduced our incubator in February of 2011. At the time, I had 8 companies, and we now have about 35 companies in that incubator, and we continue to grow very rapidly. The mix of our companies includes student-based companies, faculty companies, alumni companies, and I also have folks that are not affiliated with RPI who have come to us and said, can you help me move my company forward, and we do that. Market segments are pretty much all over the place. The only thing we don't really look at is retail. But for the most part, we have software, clean tech, nano, bios, gaming companies, e-commerce, internet companies, and most recently I'm working with a company that's building some new technology for the death industry. Basically, it's embalming services and a very different space. So we get involved in a lot of different things. We do have pre-seed companies where folks come in with just an idea and we start to formulate those ideas. We work with them as they continue to grow, and then, as I mentioned, we have companies that actually have revenue and have employees. We do mentoring. We have access to all of the RPI resources, our centers of excellence. I'll talk about these in a moment. CATS, CFIS, our energy center, CASE, which is our architectural center, and so I'm able to bring these resources to bear for companies. I can do prototyping, wind tunnel testing. I can bring engineering resources to bear. I can do an analysis of the marketability on the concept as well as the business opportunity in a number of related areas that surround RPI centers. We have a CEO roundtable where we meet on a monthly basis with our CEOs and just let them do peer-to-peer. We do business plans, development and reviews, market studies. We have a help desk so we can provide professional services that include legal services for IP as well as corporate formation, financial services, marketing, the things that you would need. A lot of them are volunteers that are either alums or folks who are affiliated with RPI. We have about 90,000 alums, and right now I have about 500 of them who are at various states of being able to mentor or coach companies with me. We have networking events, we have memberships. We try to get our companies out into the real world and act like real companies, so they go to the business chamber meetings, they attend other events, and we sponsor them to do that. We also have interns that we can provide to these companies to give them hands to help them do some things, and we generally pay for that. We start off by having each one of our companies give us a quarterly assessment of the direction they're going in, usually 3 to 5 goals, something that's totally achievable, stay on target, and mentor them through each quarter so that we're moving the companies forward. Those companies that continue to show progress get more support. Those companies that don't, we kind of back off and put our resources into the ones that are actually making progress. We identify and assist in recruiting key staff, and in some instances have actually helped them recruit CEOs into their companies. We also give them ID access to all the facilities that are on campus so they can use our computer centers, our laboratories, our libraries, our athletic facilities, and one of the most important things they get is a bus pass. So their employees actually can go to and from work for free using an RPI ID card. So there's a lot of advantages that they get that are kind of secondary to the business side of it. We also have guest speakers. We bring them on campus for activities. We assist in preparing investor funding applications, and right now, through some of the venture activities that I'm involved in with an organization called Eastern New York Angels, we do early seed investing, and we have some of those companies actually coming in now and doing presentations to our fund for early stage investing. We also have limited financial assistance for memberships, and we do some other things, but we're also planning on an annual showcase. We're actually having one in town this Thursday, tomorrow, and so I was running in and out, unfortunately, trying to coordinate some of those activities. It's called Techapalooza. Companies come in, they have an opportunity to showcase their wares to others in the community. We invite venture capitalists in, business folks, as well as academics to see what's going on with our companies. How do we get compensated? Companies don't generally pay us for our services. We provide them for free. There's no rent because I'm not renting them a facility. I help them find space in the local community. We usually pay somewhere between $10 and $15 a foot, most generally around $12. Usually no leases, month to month, and the landlords are pretty flexible on terms because they want to get these companies in and try to accelerate their growth. But if you come to us and you have IP, which has been created at the RPI campus, obviously anything that we can do to accelerate the growth of that company increases the value of that IP, which we own a piece of. We also have companies that license technology from us, so we sell our technology licenses to individuals who are looking for that technology to bring out on their own. And we also have a model that we can provide an equity component if a company is not RPI affiliated. I might take 1% to 5% of that company depending on the services that we provide and the length of time in which we provide them. I want to talk just quickly. We have 3 components, and I'll go through this in a graphic representation. But basically, on the far left-hand side is our student-based activities. On campus, we have something called the Severino Center. It's supported by a $5 million grant from an alum. And in essence, what happens is any student that is thinking about starting a business comes to that center, and they can start to build their business idea. Wrapped around that are all of our centers for excellence, our entrepreneur program, our business school, and other things. So we focus the attention there. Once that company kind of graduates, we move them into early stage activities. We start to put more mentoring into those companies. We start to help them accelerate their growth, make introductions, help them build their business, and then ultimately get them in a position where they can move downtown, actually start to hire people and grow their businesses. Just quickly, our CAT Center is a Center for Automated Technologies and Systems. Basically, these are the guys that help people figure out how to take your product and manufacture it. We can do prototyping there, but it's a resource that I have available to me. CASE is our Center for Architecture, Science, and Ecology, located down in New York City. Does a lot of early development for green technology related to businesses, to buildings and construction industry. We have a number of products that have rolled out of there. Our Center for Future Energy Systems is a group that works very closely with Les, focused on the energy space, and also our Lighting Research Center, which is a world-class center for the development of different technologies associated with the lighting industry. In particular, a lot of studies on the use of light and how it affects individuals' health. We also have close affiliation with our Office of Technology Transfer, and a big component, obviously, is what's created as IP on campus and finding ways to bring that to market. So I have a lot of interaction with faculty members who are in the midst of doing research and development and now think they have a product that they can take to market. And so we move them through that process with both the development of patents and then ultimately licenses. And so I'll leave this to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now can we bring Tobias back? Tobias, are you there? Tobias?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Great. Technology is wonderful. Okay, you're on next.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much. Well, I cannot see how many people are still there, so I hope I can still awake some of the remaining folks.
Most of them are still
Well,
here.
we've lost very few, so you've got a good majority here.
Oh, excellent. Well, it was fabulous listening to really all the participants, and I hope that when I'm next over in the US, I get a chance to meet some of you in person, because I'm sure there are lots of things to talk about. As I can't really do a PowerPoint presentation over Skype, or at least, well, I'm sure it's possible, but let's not get into any more technical difficulties. What I'd like to do is focus on some of the difficulties that the entrepreneurial and investment community has with the academic community, and perhaps I'd like to engage with you to have a bit of a dialogue, since this is meant to be a panel, and I'd be really interested in some of your opinions as well. Let me first of all dazzle you with a few statistics. The US, to my knowledge, publishes around about 400,000 patents per annum, with a slight downward trend, which is rather worrying. most of those patents, funnily enough, about 10% go into IT and computer technology. Now, by last count, I think there are some 300 odd million inhabitants in the US, so that makes about 1.25 patents roundabout per 1,000 inhabitants. To give you a bit of an example, China, as we know, has roughly about 1.3 billion inhabitants. They publish in the order of 250,000 patents per annum. So whilst that's a lot, it's still quite a way off, certainly on a comparison per capita. An interesting statistic is the one if you look at Germany, where you have 80 million inhabitants and you've got 160,000 patents per annum. So that's 2 per 1,000. And if you look at the way the German economy is structured, you can see that it has got a very strong manufacturing sector. Also the patents that emanate from Germany tend to be less IT focused. I think they have about 3% of their patents focus on computer technology and IT. And most go into intellectual property that has, let's call it, a lot more depth to it. So I seem to have lost my picture again, but you should see me in a second. Now, those are just a few of the stats for you to contemplate. It probably won't surprise many of you that the rate of commercialization, so the percentage of IP that actually ends up being a company or a license or something like that, worldwide is below 5%. That means that a lot of your tax dollars and everybody else's tax euros and pounds sterling actually end up on some shelf in a university rather than in a company. And certainly the ones of you who are in the VC, seed, incubation business know all about these stats. What we do in London, and I should take a bit of a step back just to broaden out on my rather short biography. I run a company called ScienceWorks, and ScienceWorks effectively is an IP commercialization company. So we go to universities, R&D institutes, and big corporates, and we look for market-ready IP. And this is typically not the most fantastic fundamental research, so this is really intellectual property that is ready to go out. We have a proprietary process with which we develop this IP from a patent usually into a business, and we do lots of that and very fast. So as opposed to some companies who may do a few a year, at the moment we're running at 1 to 2 per month that we spin out, and we're accelerating that process as we are actually raising funding for some more seed money to go into these businesses. I don't really want to go too much into what we do, since I think I'm here to talk about the demands on the academic sector. What we identify, and this is also the basis for our business model, are two main obstacles for generating value out of intellectual property. The first obstacle is what we call the funding gap. And I had some of you, especially, was it Richard, the gentleman who spoke before me? Does seed funding, which is, the essential. This is the kindergarten of creating value out of intellectual property, but that's basically the biggest stumbling block. and I can tell you from my own experience, since I come out of the private equity and venture capital business, most venture capitalists will talk about, oh yes, we do seed and early stage, but when you actually sit down with them, they get suddenly very restless, and they'd rather like to see some revenues, and the worrying trend is going towards investment into later stage companies. So the gap that needs to be bridged in terms of funding businesses is widening. Also going back to the returns that are being made in the VC business, coming back to Les's introduction, I can only confirm that there are very, very few venture capital firms who are actually making money. When you talk to VC firms, most of them will also tell you that they want to have global markets, disruptive technologies, and all manner of other wonderful things. And very few of them actually do focus on making money with some very good fundamental intellectual property that doesn't necessarily need to be absolutely global, but still can create a very valuable business. So this is the first obstacle, the funding gap. The second one, and this is where you have a slight link to one of the reasons why VCs go more later stage, but there is also a link to the academic community, is what we call the experience gap. I don't really want to call it the skills gap, because there are lots of skilled people out there, but it is the experience gap. What I mean by that is that, in essence, there aren't enough good entrepreneurs out there who can really pick up an idea, a concept, an innovation, or whatever, and drive it into a valuable business. Secondly, lots of innovators that come out of academia in general either have no interest or are absolute rubbish at being entrepreneurs. And this is no disrespect to these people, but as you know yourselves, not everybody has a talent to be an entrepreneur. It can be learned. There is, the old argument, can you learn to be an entrepreneur, or is it in your genes? I guess there is, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and you can learn lots about business management. Does it make you a good entrepreneur? I don't know. The jury is probably still out there. But going back to the statistics numbers, there is simply an awful lot of innovation out there, and there isn't enough money and there isn't enough experience to drive that into businesses. And this is what certainly we in the Western world are suffering from. This is why there aren't any more businesses being created in the US and across Europe. And this is partly to do why there aren't going to be any jobs. There is also something that may be a little bit contentious, but there is both from the VC community and from the young entrepreneurs, there is a very strong drive into the IT business generally. There is an enormous amount of highly capable and highly skilled software developers and writers out there who are creating, the next greatest social network and the next greatest website and the next company that produces games or whatever, all of which can create value, but it doesn't necessarily create a lot of jobs for local economy, and it doesn't necessarily build factories. There isn't also enough research and depth in, let's call it, manufacturing capability. That's something that has been lost to a great extent, unfortunately, in the US. And indeed, we all know that Britain's kind of lost its industry to whoever wanted to buy it. And probably in the West, again, the only good example is Germany, where there is an increasing amount of industrial production simply because the Germans are just very, very good at making stuff. they can afford to produce things in their country at higher cost because they are more efficient and they have much better manufacturing depth than a competitor can produce things in China. It doesn't go for everything, but there is that basis, something that unfortunately has been lost in the US. Don't know why, but perhaps it's recoverable. So where does this leave academia? I think Joanna has left by now. I can't see her red costume anymore, but it was very encouraging to hear that not only is she and SUNY trying to bridge the gap or the early stage education, but also Les, are you going to interrupt me?
No, it's just me. I'm playing with the microphone.
Oh, okay. So I've actually switched myself off to some extent because I was hearing myself in an echo, which is a bit irritating. And I don't count myself as one of these people who are in love with their own voice. So academia really has a big job to do in trying to help educate people to become better entrepreneurs. That's really one of the things that I would mostly welcome. Closer integration with commerce, with industry, where people in the practice of running businesses, people who are good entrepreneurs, can engage with students and give them some of their wisdom and some of their experience and try and encourage a better entrepreneurial spirit. How you do that in practice, I don't know, but I'm sure the educators can come up with a solution. But that's really one of the essential things that we need doing in all of our Western societies, whether it's the US or Europe. So on that happy note, I'd love to hear some comments.
All right, thank you. Good thing I was just about to cut you off, so you're okay.
Thank you, Tobias. Now, maybe the panelists should come forward and then we can entertain questions. Okay, who's going to give the first question? If someone doesn't volunteer, I'm going to assign someone to ask a question. Go ahead. Oh, we have a question right here.
Mine is not so much of a question, but I just want to commend you people for being part of the solution. A lot of people, we can define problems all day long, and we're here, and everybody here is trying to make an attempt at solving the problem, but you people work every day at trying to solve the problem. And I also spoke to the young lady who just left. My question before was a rhetorical question about the future of America, and a lot of it does relate back to the family structure. Dr. Bavona here mentioned that, the family structure, a breakdown of that. But the solution, I believe, to getting this message out that education is cool and sexy and all that kind of thing has got to be done, I think, via national television. That's the purveyor of the culture. That and social media and texting and everything else, I think you have to hit people where it hurts. So your message, it's fantastic that you've each done an amazing job on your presentation, but I think now it has to be a global American, or at least American, national television to get people like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, James Cameron to produce the documentaries, focus the energy to get the message out to everybody all at once on a national level that this is the right thing to do to bring America back from the brink.
Thank you.
I just want to say in our community, Pradeep is our Steven Spielberg. So.
Could you identify yourself?
Yes, I'm Kathy Bokor from AccuRapid, the language service, a company that specializes in technical translations. Just a comment first to Tobias. The statistics about patents, they don't lie, they say, but there is a different interpretation. In Europe, it used to be so that patents had to be filed in all the languages of the European Community countries, members, and it bled people, entrepreneurs and inventors to death. So they didn't have money left to create a company and commercialize it. It changed last year, actually earlier this year. Now it's only 3 languages that they have to translate into. My question to the panelists, especially Pradeep and Dick and Clayton, is do you help, once a company is established as and commercializes successfully, do you help them take the next step and market the products abroad, help them maybe partner with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that has an export initiative? Do you help them take the next step and market their products abroad, since that's America's greatest export invention? Either of you?
The ESDC's international group does do that. We have a program ourselves, and we also rely heavily on the Gold Key program that the Department of Commerce has in a number of countries. And as an investor in companies, with my VC hat on, one of the values I feel that I bring to it is often a much more international view of their product and their markets than let's say most entrepreneurs might have as they build their solutions in their garages or their incubators. So I think from both sides, I do our best, and I also help share the realistic understanding of what the cost of patents and CE certification and UL certifications that are required for products as well.
It's less now than it used to be.
Still, that doesn't help because it's still a lot.
It's still a lot. Yes. Pradeep, do you help?
Sure, we do. Let me address the question about patents as well first. You can't just very easily generalize that just because China has more patents now than the U.S., the quality of those patents are important. I mean,
exactly.
Quality also goes down with the number of patents. If you look at it from a sheer number standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to try and compete. I mean, they got 2 billion people versus 2+ billion people versus 300 million here, as we said, and it's a numbers game. And if they publish more patents, it's not going to work. Patents, you got to be very careful with patents, because I've been in the patent. I've got several patents myself, and it takes years to get a patent in some fields. And maybe Roger can attest to this, in an IT, social media kind of technology-related area, I mean, by then, the technology is obsolete already, probably.
Right.
So value is very little. You take a look at it on the other side, on the clean tech side, it takes 15, 20 years to build a business. By then, the patent is obsolete. So you really have to think about the value of how those patents really matter and the timing of those things. So you can't just judge everything, obviously, by patents. So what we do, so that was just the thing on the patents. On the international side, we do have very close partnerships with institutions, for example, in Asia and Japan and Taiwan and China, as well as in India. We also have some key partnerships with institutions in Germany, for example, and in other parts of Europe as well. And we actually, within our organization, have strategic alliance, people that are responsible for strategic alliance development activities. So this is not just helping our companies sell abroad, but also making sure that we can attract companies from abroad to come to our center and interact with us and do various different things. And we work very closely with what Clayton said. We work very close. ESD does have an international department. We work closely with them. We do conferences and workshops. We send teams of people to those places. And we also bring them over. We also work with the U.S. Department of Commerce, too. They have a very active program to make sure that our companies can sell abroad. So yes, we do all of that.
May I have a follow-up question?
Sure. If it's quick, we have somebody else waiting.
Yeah, everybody mentions Asia and Europe. Nobody talks about the South American countries. Brazil is rising in leaps and bounds. anything going there?
We have offices in Chile and Brazil and Mexico, and on a New York level, and of course the Department of Commerce has Gold Key teams and all those throughout Latin America.
Thank
so
you.
It's definitely not one we've ignored.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Next.
Good morning, I'm Joshua Smith, and I'm chair of the Industrial Development Agency for the City of Newburgh. And I want to commend the center for this effort. This is the first one I've been able to come to, the first breakfast, and I have to say I'm very much impressed with what has been put together here. I'm a former community college president as well as university professor. And one of the things I would like to highlight, because of the last comment we had from the UK about bringing entrepreneurs together with students. What I heard from your first presenter, from Marist, might very well be the key to the gatekeepers to getting to those students beyond all of the suggestions that you've heard about the use of the social media and the use of major directors and producers to put together some really fine work to yank the kids in. The gatekeepers are the faculty in the high schools, the faculty in the community colleges. Many of them have no experience of dealing with entrepreneurs such as yourselves. It would be, I think, appropriate to start bringing in the faculty and make them your partners in this effort. Because once you have them, they will then follow up from what you have brought to those students.
Thank you, Josh.
Let me comment on that. As Pradeep was talking about in terms of what they're doing at the University of Albany and the College of Nanoscience with respect to how faculty are being viewed, it's also what we do at Marist College in the School of Computer Science and Mathematics. Many of the people that I hire as faculty are people who have indeed worked in industry. They come in already with that type of experience. They're people who've started their own companies, and we highly encourage our faculty and reward them, based upon tenure, promotion, and salaries and so forth, in terms of working with companies, especially any sort of activity that involves students working with those companies. So it is something that we also believe is extremely important and is indeed something that we encourage our faculty to do, and they're all very eager to do it.
Thank you. We have another question coming.
I hesitate to say too much, but I'm fascinated by this. It's really the first type of a meeting like this that I've come to, and it's very interesting to see what academia is doing. But I submit to you one thing I haven't heard mentioned. I guess I did mention it a bit before. Tobias, I heard you mention something about Germany is the only European country that's really manufacturing. I think that one of the reasons is that they can keep their industry in their country because they don't spend money on their military. The United States spends a lot of money on the military. I believe the United States actually pays for the military to be in Germany. And the reason I bring this up, I think I did hear a laugh, but the reason I bring this up is we're talking about economic development in a country that is truly bankrupt. And nothing has been stated that we have to do something about the economic development of our country. If you think I'm off course, please, I'll sit down. The point that I'm trying to make is China is eating our lunch. Our government, our state government, is inviting China to come to the Eastern IBM campus to put in a solar industry. I don't know if everybody knows this, but aside from that, and there also is an American company that's bidding for that, but from what I understand, the political fix is in and China will get it, or is first on the list. We are supporting companies such as Solyndra, giving them taxpayer money, saying that this is the future, and 1 year later, it's gone under, and 1,100 jobs are gone. I think we have to direct some of our attention away from, away from what the academicians see and get out into the real world. Because unless we do something with the family and with the country so that we are not bankrupt, we will go nowhere, and we will have many meetings like this, but ultimately we will fail.
I think that's what this is all about, trying to integrate those two. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Luke. Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, my name is Luke Curvin. I'm the Commissioner of Planning and Development for the City of Yonkers in Westchester County, New York State's 4th largest city. And I just want to make a couple of comments, and then I'd like to ask a question. One is that prior to joining the City of Yonkers about 4 years ago, I worked for Empire State Development, and which is New York State's economic development agency. And one of the things that I found in working with a number of communities is that based on land use and other principles, there were a number of communities that were cannibalizing their manufacturing and industrial base. Yonkers was one of those communities that tried to hold on to its manufacturing base, and we successfully did that for a number of years. It's only been in the last couple of years that we started to see that decline. But it's not without a lot of trying, both by the administration as well as by the community, because Yonkers, probably like a lot of upstate communities and probably like some of the comments that Tobias was making, always had an emphasis. It was built into the DNA of Yonkers to have an industrial base, had a strong blue collar and other industrial workforce, and so in many ways we tried to hold on to that, even though the market dynamics were pushing a lot of communities to move to retail and mixed use and other things. So that's one comment. Secondly, we recently created something called Y Enterprise, where we're launching a new incubator accelerator. I've also successfully raised about $500,000 for seed money. I believe we're the second municipality in the United States to do that. Thirdly, about 10 years ago, I sit on the board of an organization called NIFTY. It's a National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship, which tries to get kids in junior high school and high school to embrace entrepreneurship. So based on another comment that Tobias made, I think that's something that other communities should look at in terms of incorporating into their communities. And then finally, my first job in government was I worked in the United States Senate as a legislative assistant to a senator 20 years ago. And I heard many comments like that last commentator 20 years ago. The United States was in decline, where are we going? And as we all know, we came back, and we came back strong. And I think part of that, and here's my question, was because of commercialization of technologies that were created in the military at the time. There was commercialization that came out of DARPA and other places. I heard Tobias talk about commercialization coming out of corporates and government, but we have not addressed whether or not we will see commercialization coming out of the latest investment in the United States military over the last probably 10 years.
Who would like to address that? Pradeep?
Let me sort of try and address your question and the comments that were made earlier. And this, we're getting into a discussion that's becoming more of a personal opinion type issue as opposed to something that's more, that's tangible in terms of trying to establish what we think is policy. Let's not forget, I think you pointed out correctly, that we spend a lot of money on military, and it is one of the largest economic development engines of the country today. So unless we actually, and there are a ton of manufacturing jobs related to the military. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, we sell munitions to foreign countries, we go and blast them out, and then we sell them some more again. I mean, this has been happening for several decades. It's good economic development from a manufacturing standpoint for the US. So unless we think about how we actually transition that to something that's more productive in terms of technology. Energy is one example. We talked about, the current administration is trying to spend a lot of money on clean tech as an engine for economic growth. And unless it's continued and done at a continuous level for several decades, it's not going to be successful. So I do agree from that standpoint. So the emphasis definitely needs to be on the economic development opportunities across various industry sectors. The other point I want to make also is 30 years ago, we were jumping up and down and crying foul because the Japanese were outspending us on technology, and this is related to microelectronics and information technology, computer-related technologies. And that's when the federal government got involved and created Sematech about 30 years ago, exactly. And we turned around. I mean, we gave up our manufacturing base for standard memory-based technologies, which became a commodity over a period of time. And we focused our efforts on next-generation technology, which was microprocessors and things like that. And that has come back really strong back in the U.S. in terms of the largest companies in the world today in the microelectronics area are U.S.-based companies. Some manufacturing is done overseas. A lot of that manufacturing has come back to the U.S. as well. I think we need to look at it from a very strategic standpoint. And yes, you're right. Government should not invest in the Solyndras of the world. I totally agree with that. I mean, that's picking winners. What they should be doing is investing in technology spaces through the kinds of successes that I talked about, the consortia that we're doing in Albany, New York. I mean, the government, the state government, the federal government is investing in like a Sematech type organization where the assets, if the company goes bankrupt, they don't get sold to the Chinese. They remain here in the US and others can come in and fill in the shoes. And that successful model still, you can't beat that. I mean, the Chinese are going to outspend us. I mean, they essentially own several percentage of our assets here already. 40% of our assets is what they own, of our debt, right. So they're going to outspend us. There's no doubt about it. We got to be smarter and cleverer, and you're right. I mean, we need to start at the educational level. That's, at the very early stage of the education, teach our kids that we need to be competitive. This country, I'll tell you, I mean, I'm a perfect example. I'm an immigrant here. I'm a current U.S. citizen. We need to open our doors for new immigrants that are the smartest and the brightest. They're not coming in. I mean, when I came into this country about 25 years ago, this was the place to come. From India. I came from India. Today, I talk to my, colleagues or friends and their kids back in India. We don't want to go to the U.S. Why do we want to go there? Our job opportunities here are much better. We're closing our doors for them. I mean, this was a country that was built on immigrants. The smartest minds were brought in from outside the country, and we're shutting down those minds too. It's not just organic growth internally. We need to be able to attract people from outside and still make this, a country that we can live up to. So hopefully that helped. But these are opinions.
I think with that, we'll conclude this portion of the symposium. Because, Tobias, I think it's about tea time for you in London, isn't it?
Maybe just make a quick comment?
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, tea time's gone and past, and I fully endorse what Pradeep has just said. From my perspective across the ocean, I think the US has to take much more of a holistic approach to rediscovering the American spirit. A lot of the things that made America great, the reason why Pradeep and many other people emigrated to the USA had disappeared because the US was sitting on its laurels for too long and in a way financed Japan and China to do their own developments and overtake the US. So to some extent, yes, we need to get brains into the US, but then again, you've got a lot of good brains there already. I think you need to create the US as almost as a biosphere where you can develop innovation better, where you can rediscover your manufacturing capabilities and take long-term strategic decisions and allow people and entrepreneurs to grow and foster them. And that's really what's not being done, at least from my point of view.
Thank you, Tobias. All right, with that, let's have another round of applause for all the panelists. And thank you, Tobias, for hanging in there. I know you've had a long day with regard to this. And I'd like to now close this portion of it and turn it over to Les for some closing comments.
Thank you, Arthur, for moderating this morning. This morning would not be possible without the help of a whole bunch of people. Our intern for the summer and hopefully new employee down the road, Sarah Bird, was responsible for all this, so thank you, Sarah. The crew from Media 721 who did a phenomenal job on the sound and the webcast and the video, we thank them very much for their help. And of course, the facilities here would not have gone unprovided if not for Orange County Community College. So thank you to Dr. Richards and the staff. For those of you that are not familiar, we do this breakfast once a month. It may not be this elaborate all the time, but we do this once a month. Our next breakfast is October 19th, and it will be held at the facilities of Media 721 in Kingston. Any of you who are not on our mailing list and would like to be, please see Sarah, and she'll be happy to include you. There's been a lot said this morning. A lot digested. I apologize that we ran over, but I'm not really apologizing because I think this was well worth it. I don't think you're going to get a panel like this almost anywhere, and I'm very proud to have hosted this and have all these magnificent panelists come this morning and address us what I know are key and sensitive areas to each of us in each of our endeavors. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you to the panelists, and have a productive day, and thank you very much.